Good morning and welcome to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. I am Gary Sutton and live from the Phoenix Park Hotel here in Washington, D.C. at the Federation for American Immigration Reform Hold Their Feet to the Fire event. I do want to tell you up front that they pay for our hotel room and they also pay for our facilities here from which we broadcast, but they do not tell us what to say because that's still guaranteed in the First Amendment. And if they did, we would not be here. So welcome to the show today. It's a very special show. We've got some great guests this morning. And we're going to start it out with a gentleman who is, I would say, an up-and-coming voice in this country. And if you haven't heard about him, you're going to. He's a father of 4 sons. He's a former management consultant, having some of the world's largest companies as his former clients. He's also a guy who's in demand right now as far as talk shows. And he has written a great book, a bestseller out there. It's called The Big Black Lie. And his name is Kevin Jackson. He joins us here on the Gary Sutton Show. Kevin, it is great to have you in this morning. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's been an amazing visit so far.
Is this your first time for Holding Their Feet to the Fire?
No, I've been here about, I think, 4 times. I missed last year, but I think this is my 4th trip.
You know, in a year where we have talked probably more about race with Ferguson and everything else that is going on, the Big Black Lie and race pimping, the multi-trillion-dollar business of liberalism, probably is a right-in-your-face kind of book, right?
It is. And, it's funny. All my books are humor-based, and I wrote that particular book around this idea that, white people are missing out on the boat by not getting into race pimping. If you look at Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, it's been a pretty good career. Wouldn't you like to not pay your $4.5 million in taxes and get away with it? So it was a ShamWow commercial for, hey, you too can be part of the, and so it's a funny book, and all my books are humor-based, but they make the bigger point. And the bigger point is we have capitulated as conservatives and allowed guys like Sharpton and Jackson and even Barack Obama to rise to the level of power where they can become out-and-out blatant racist, pick your pockets because of the so-called guilt that you're supposed to feel on this stuff, and it's just become ridiculous. I mean, you think about things like illegal immigration is good, right? When did illegal immigration become good or cost positive to this country? Voter ID is disenfranchisement of blacks. A black president, and they're talking about disenfranchisement of blacks. Spend your way out of debt. Whatever. Look at whatever policy it is and ask yourself with just basic reasoning, the reasoning of a 5th grader, what should be happening here. And we are fighting battles. And the problem is, Gary, is we're not fighting battles. We're not marketing conservatism right. Mm-hmm. We're allowing people to set the narrative on who we are. We're allowing people to. And so once they do that, when they say, oh, well, these conservatives are bad, then anything they say is okay. Oh, well, you should allow illegal immigration, Kevin. That's going to help black people. Okay, well, you are right, Mr. Liberal. You're so right. We need to allow us some illegal immigration then, and we become these little drones of ourselves, but as opposed to telling me that voter ID, for example, is disenfranchisement is effectively you telling me I'm too stupid to get a driver's license or too stupid to get on a plane or too stupid to get a checking account or too stupid to get a job, because all those things require me to have an ID. But we don't fight that back, and we allow them to set the narrative.
One of the things you mentioned about conservatives don't make arguments, and I would say reasonable people don't make arguments a lot of times. They accept a certain amount of guilt. You and I were talking off the air, and I said, when someone calls you a racist, I can't think of anything more despicable to call somebody. But when someone calls you a racist, I've often said, and it hasn't happened very much, I said, prove it. Tell me about how I'm a racist. Do you know me? Do you know how I operate? The point being that so many times you see conservatives today and just regular folk who don't even know what they are, accepting guilt for something they haven't done. And so then they back up in the argument like this with their hands up in the air and they say, oh, my goodness, they must be right because I must have some deep-seated things like I hated my father. You go to the psychologist, I hated my father, but I didn't know I hated my father, but I hated my dad, right? Yeah, till now, right?
Yeah, well, what I think, like, for example, let's look at the immigration argument. So the immigration argument is very simple. Mm-hmm. We're all immigrated here. Mm-hmm. All of us came over on a boat. Is the immigration discussion, And
I always like the Bill Murray line and stripes. We're mutts. We were kicked out of every decent country in the world. We ended up here, right?
All right.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, I'll tell you this. I was born here. Mm-hmm. I didn't come over on a boat.
Yep.
And if you want to go back 400 years and tell me about, and I happen to be part Indian, I could qualify. I have enough Indian blood in me to be Indian.
Right.
I will tell you, I don't care. I'm American.
That's right.
Period.
No hyphen?
No hyphen.
Okay.
So when you say to me, well, Kevin, your people came over on a boat, I don't care. So what? Every country, somebody came from somewhere or did something.
That's exactly right.
So at the end of the day, all I know, and my family goes back to the Clasbys. That's our slave name. And that's as far as I can go back. Okay. Other than that, beyond that, I have to get DNA done to know what my origins are. So what I'm telling you is from the time my family, where we can trace back on heritage.com, where we are, is Clasbys. Every single one of us was born right here. So when you say to me, everybody came here on a boat, not me. So it's my country.
Right.
And if I were born in Mexico, I'd be saying the same thing about that. Mm-hmm. And I would be doing what I could to improve my country so that I would not have to immigrate, and go somewhere else. And so we readily accept this idea that these people couldn't do well in their own countries. Now they want to come here, and you're going to tell me they couldn't survive in their own country, in their own culture, with their own people, and suddenly they're going to come here and do great, not speaking the language, barely having the clothes on their back, and going to have to become immediate wards of our government and wards of the taxpayer.
You call yourself a black conservative, which automatically means
I call myself a conservative.
You
just happen to notice my nice tan.
My only reason I say that is people will see you and say, "Oh, well, you're not black then." If they're on the liberal side, right? Which is what happens. I mean, they get into the race thing.
Well, sure, but
and you call yourself a conservative, which is great. But it's interesting how much we have gotten divided in this country to sides where we have all these rules before we're allowed to think. And guys like you just say, hey, wait a second, I'm an American. You don't have to put a hyphen in front of it. You don't have to say qualify it. You don't have to say I'm this, I'm that, I'm something else. I'm just an American. I'm trying to figure this thing out.
Well, because, look, I go back to this is the greatest country in the world, and I equate let me address the black conservative thing first of all. So yeah, people would say you're not black. That has nothing to my political ideology.
Whatever that means. Yeah, I don't know what that means.
It has no more bearing on my blackness than if I say I like Thai food and you say, well, I like fried chicken, right? But, I've never had anybody, if they say, Kevin, let's go eat, and I don't say fried chicken, and if I say, let's go eat Thai, and they go, oh, you ain't black, you going to eat Thai, don't you want some chicken? I've never had that happen, but let me say something about politics.
Yes.
And then suddenly, you can't be black. And I was having a discussion with a guy the other day, and he says, you just hate Al Sharpton and Barack Obama because you're jealous of them. I'm like, jealous of what? Look, and I said, no, and I said, well, I'm glad they wake you up in the morning and they help you get your life in order because I've checked for them and those two Negroes are nowhere in my house. So that addressing that is to me is a non sequitur. Yeah. But what I do want to talk about for a second is when we talk about immigration and we talk about and I'm going to put it in terms of education. I'd ask you, Gary, what's the easier school to get into, community college or Harvard?
Community college.
Exactly. Harvard is very selective. It costs more. It means more once it's done.
Right.
Getting into this country should be very selective. They tell us the system's broken. It isn't broken. It's difficult to get into. It's a difficult thing to get to because it should mean something, and it used to mean something. I've traveled to 22 countries in Africa. I lived in China. I lived in France. I've been all throughout Europe, and the one thing that made people go, wow, was when I had that American passport. And that meant something. Well, people, I wish I could get to America, man. It's amazing. I hope to go there one day. I wish I could live. That's what you hear.
Exactly.
And so we've gone away from that because it's become so easy, and they want it to be open. And if you look at how far America has fallen in the past few decades under the liberalism banner, it's directly related to how we allow people to get in. And I say when we're going to, in terms of marketing of the conservative movement, why are we not talking about immigration with respect to how it is to get into Harvard? Because that's things they can understand. You say, well, I tell you what, why don't we make it where everybody can go to Harvard?
Yeah.
And see what Barack Obama says. See what the liberals, well, because Harvard, you'd have Harvard in arms if we said everybody should be able to go to Harvard.
You know what's interesting, though, Kevin? You just hit on something really important. The idea of using a block of people. So you have 97% of the black population, we'll use that just for a moment, voted for Barack Obama. Now, why did they vote for Barack? No, 97% of anybody doesn't vote for anybody in this country, but in that particular case, that was the case. Now, in the meantime, we have the lowest wage increase that we've had in the history of our country for a while, 1%, I think, over the last 10, 15 years. We're looking at people screaming about minimum wage. We're talking right there about giving free community college. we're reaching for minimums instead of allowing people to have maximums and moving forward and using people for our own particular voting benefit. I mean, am I off base on that?
No, you're correct, certainly correct on the using of people, and that's why they like the buckets, you know.
Yeah.
You notice Hillary Clinton's, her little ad had gay couples and interracial couples and poor couples and black couples, and, you know, she had every bucket there. I said they should have called it the bucket list. But with respect to, I forget the other point. The bigger point was what I wanted to get to. But so yes, they are using people. But I think that what we do when we fight back and use their own tools against them and say, you know, things like, well, you want to give this community college away, but you know the average kid goes to those schools, reads to the 9th grade or 6th grade or 7th grade level. Right. But what about the average kid that goes to Harvard? So when you can say to them, why are you okay with being very selective in education and having this system that is obviously unbalanced? But when it comes to these other things, you want it to be very open and open up Harvard. You know, open up anything that the liberals are doing. Let's attack them and use it against them. And that's why I say we've done just such a poor job.
It's a great argument, by the way,
of marketing. And thank you, but we've done such a poor job of taking ideas that everybody follows. There's not a person in this country that doesn't want the best schools for their kids. There's not a person that doesn't want the best neighborhoods. Not a person that doesn't want to feel protected, that doesn't want to have an opportunity to create a business or have a good job or whatever. They want to live a conservative life, and we can't sell the concept of going on vacation and having a good family and all this. If we can't sell that, man, shame on us.
You know, when you look at the immigration debate right now and the president's executive order out there and Congress is debating and the Republicans have this split, and I'm thinking, going back to what you said, do we obey the rule of law in this country? And is it okay for us to exercise the rule of law in this country? And I guess the point that I want to get to there is, you know, where do we go with that whole idea that somehow we are still a rule of law place? I mean, how do we get back to that? And why are conservatives so bad generally at making that particular argument?
Because the rule of law sounds very professorial. It's like, you know, the average person on the street isn't thinking about the rule of law. But what they are thinking about is, why can't my kids go to Harvard? I mean, that, you know, if you say, well, if you ask them the question, so Barack Obama wants to make community college free. Well, why doesn't he let you into Harvard? Yeah, that's good. Kevin, you raised a good question, man. Why can't my kids go to Harvard? You know, you go, look, do you realize the average kid that goes to Harvard makes this much money and the kid that goes to JUCO makes this much? When you put it into those kind of terms, that's a humanistic term. You know, the rule of law. I'd like to talk to you, young black man, about the rule of law.
Yeah.
You know, he's like,
that's a good point. Yeah, that you need to put it down on a level where people are understanding it. Yeah.
We make it sound like we're writing a position paper on it. I mean,
I will correct myself in the future on that because I'm one of those guys. See, I used to be a teacher of Constitution, so I plead guilty. But
the language is good. I mean, your knowledge is good. It's a question of if you've got to know the audience. And so when we start talking about, you know, these very highbrow, you know, things that and talking about it like we're going to go talk to Congress, you've lost 90% of the population. You just want to say, man, let me ask you this. If somebody came into your store and stole some cigarillos, what would you do? I'd go get my cigarillos, you know, whatever. Well, that's what Michael Brown did.
Right.
You know, you have to make them come to grips with what happened. You know, and I asked a guy one time on the Ferguson situation, I said, let me ask you this, man. I said, how much money does it take to get killed in the hood on the street? And the dude goes, I said, could you get killed over $50? And I bet you everybody almost in unison said, less than that.
Yeah.
So when you break it down like that, what I was saying to them is everybody was saying Michael Brown's only stole $50 worth of stuff. Really? I know some people, if you steal $5 from them, they will kill you.
We're going to take a break right here. We're going to come right back. Kevin Jackson, very special guest here this morning on the Gary Sutton Show. We'll be right back with him after on News Radio 910 WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show with Kevin Jackson, author of The Big Black Lie and Race Pimping, the multi-trillion-dollar business of liberalism, and a very passionate speaker on the impact of illegal immigration on the black community and the efforts of to muzzle discussion about it. You know, Kevin, we hear a lot of people say about this whole immigration thing that it's the new civil rights movement. And you kind of bristle when you hear that whole kind of thing.
Well, look,
as most of us do, I hope.
Right. You know, we're talking about people who, if there's a civil rights movement, I would say it originates in their own country as a lack of civil rights, and they should be trying to fix their own countries. And if you're at that level of desperation, then we could look at refugee status or whatever, or get into our legal immigration system. It may take you a while, but that's the cross you bear. But to call it that is ridiculous. And I'm not even going to get into blacks were brought here illegally and all that. We all know how we got here, but that's ridiculous. They call the Michael Brown situation in Ferguson the second civil rights movement. Really, a kid robbing a store, attacking a cop, and you want to build a Rosa Parks scenario around him? I mean, but that's where we've come. Look, it is a shame that countries are run in such a way that their people want to leave. But it isn't even that. The issue with us is it's not that these people will stay in the most dire circumstances. Look at what's going on in the Sudan. Look at what's going on in Congo and Sierra Leone and various other places where there's blood diamonds and all that. These people, the only reason why they don't leave Africa is because the proximity to the best country in the world is an ocean away. You don't see somebody from the Sudan going to Ethiopia.
Right.
You don't see somebody from Congo going into Mauritania or whatever. It isn't like, I'm going to go to Nigeria where there's less oppression. The strife that's going on in Africa right now, tell me where they have a problem that we have in the United States. Tell me what country is Kenya getting an influx of people coming from Ghana? No. There's nowhere in Africa that they have anything close because nobody wants to go to those countries. The reason why people want to come to America is the same reason why people want their kids to go to the best schools, not community college. I want my kid, whatever it is that you can get your kid, the thing is that you'll say as a parent is I want you to get the best that we can provide. Okay? And so the best generally has a limit. Whether you want to get your kid into the best primary school, the best secondary school, the best, college, they say, we're only taking 25 applicants this year. Well, that's our immigration system. Deal with it. And we don't do that. And we don't sell the concept that to get to this country, you're getting to the best country. There's a reason why we have a waiting list. There's no waiting list to get into North Korea. You want to go immigrate to North Korea?
Have fun.
I mean, it's going to be a relatively short line.
You're not seeing a race across our southern border into Mexico either.
Exactly.
And you're not seeing rafts pulled up on the beaches in Cuba. Right. I don't see any North American boat people heading into Vietnam.
I don't see people going crazy to get in to go visit with Vladimir Putin or get into China.
So we must have something going on. The problem is, why do we decide that illegal doesn't matter, and this is the only place that it doesn't matter? Everywhere else, and we talk about illegal. Oh my God, it's illegal. Well, wait a minute, they're undocumented. They're we use all these different words to dance around illegal, and somehow illegal doesn't matter. And then we make up these contorted things where we say, well, if they were here for at least 5 years, then we could keep them. So wait a second. If I robbed a bank and I stayed clean for 5 years, do I get out of, do I have to give the money back or I have to go to jail?
Right. Yeah. Well, they try to make this thing, they're going to parse it because they want the issue, the bigger issue that nobody talks about this is that blacks and Hispanics want to allow this for one simple reason. They believe that whites have been imperial leaders of America for too long, and by getting this influx, they can knock white folks off their high horse. They can then implement systematic changes that make it better for everybody. Now, the irony of this is that they're doing this, and the man happens to be black. We have a black president, and they want to upset the system that allowed America to put a black man in power and choose all the people that he wants. That's the irony. And that should tell you the problem that you face when you're dealing with a minority community. Somebody like a Condoleezza Rice is a scourge. Somebody like Snoop Dogg is a hero. That's the world that we live in, this bizarro world where right is wrong and wrong is right, and the person you think we would emulate, we don't. The person that you would think you would want your son. I wouldn't want my son to grow up like Snoop Dogg,
right.
But there are many people who do. And so that's where we are. And all of these things, immigration, there are members of the Congressional Black Caucus that are convinced black people we need to sell ourselves down the road for a little while and allow this scourge that's happening to America that's mostly affecting us negatively in order to get the white man off his high horse. And we're going to sacrifice you for the time being because the new power structure will put us in power. That's what they believe.
The so-called, and I read about it the other week, the so-called browning of America right now. Yeah. They were talking about it. I said to someone, I said, what the hell does that mean? I said, do we stop just being Americans again? I said, if America's brown or white or whatever, it doesn't matter. But if we are Americans, but the point is, we've stopped assimilating, we've stopped asking people to assimilate, and we've hyphenated America so badly that we're back at the very point you were just talking about.
Well, here's a controversial statement. Do you want a brown America? Being honest. You go look at black neighborhoods, go look at brown neighborhoods, and, I live in the hood. And I'm going to tell you right now, I lived there because I wanted to gentrify the area and give it a little bit of class. I've been robbed 4 times. My car's been broken into 4 times. Had to stop. We stopped 4 or 5 robberies in the neighborhood, etc. Is that the browning of America that you want? Where you look at the inner cities, look at the amount of crime, look at the schools, look at everything that's going on in these areas that are predominantly black and brown. Let's just do real talk here on your radio show and ask yourself, is that what you want? Do you want the lifestyle of a third world armpit like Mexico as the way you run your country? No. The answer is no. I don't want African culture. I don't want Mexican culture. I don't want Polish culture. I want American culture.
Yep.
And I want everybody to rise to a standard that we've set to be the most civilized country in the world.
And that was the point I was just going to make, too, is that I want everybody, and I don't care what color, what religion, whatever, to want to rise to be the very best they can be with no ceilings.
There are black people, Gary, who want out of black neighborhoods. They're sick of it. They're sick of the gang violence. They're sick of the drive-by shootings. They're sick of the robberies and the rapes and the murders and everything else. And, but people are too afraid to say it. It's, and it's the same is true in the Hispanic communities for their folks. So we just need to come back to the One America concept, and we need to protect this country.
Kevin, where can people find more out about you? You have a website there, I know.
Yeah, The Black Sphere, SPHERE.net, and my book, Race Pimping, is at racepimping.com.
The Big Black Lie and Race Pimping, the multi-trillion-dollar business of liberalism.
Well, that's two different books.
Okay, all right. but okay, Race Pimping is the one we're looking at right there.
Yeah.
Well, listen, it's been great being with you. I really enjoyed it. I hope we can do it again sometime,
Sure.
And I like the straight talk.
My pleasure.
Kevin, thanks so much. We'll look forward for you soon, okay?